On the 22nd of October, the Chancellor announced more help for the self-employed, for the leisure-related businesses, and actually for all businesses. Now, I've done two videos. I split it into two videos, and this video concentrates on the job support scheme, which is available to businesses up and down the country. Now, please don't get confused. The rules, particularly on the job support scheme, have completely changed compared to the rules as they were originally announced. So we've got the original rules and then we've got the new rules. So just remember the new rules, and if you Google it or whatever, then you might stumble across the old rules. So just bear that in mind. If you think, well, there's rules here and there's this, it says this, they have changed. And I'm just going to concentrate on the new rules so we can quickly forget the old rules that there were. Now, I think that the rules are, or could be, quite difficult to understand, which is why I've tried to really simplify it in this video. And I think it is something, I really feel that this is something that a lot of people are going to get confused about. So please feel free to share this video with people who you might worry they're going to get confused or don't understand the rules. If you subscribe to the channel, I will tell you about further and future updates, and even pressing the like button, that helps, because that helps with the algorithm and make sure as many people see it and understand the rules as we can. With the job support scheme, there are two sets of rules, so there's sort of two branches to it. If your business was closed by the government, then there's one set of rules, and for other businesses that have been affected by the virus, there's another set of rules. So let's start with the businesses that have been closed by the government, because they're simpler, and I can get that out of the way. And I accept that that's not that many businesses, because it's really in tier 3 areas where, I mean, principally it's the pubs in tier 3 areas, but there are one or two other businesses as well. So if your business has been closed by the government, then the job support scheme looks, smells and feels very much like the furlough. And the way it works is that you get 2/3 of the staff's wages refunded by the government, and then you pay that to them. And the third that's missing, the poor employee suffers. I mean, you can make up the difference, but that's not envisaged. It's envisaged that the employee loses money and actually receives 1/3 less than they would otherwise get. The employer pays the national insurance and the pensions that might be applicable. But it's also foreseen that since this is mostly pub workers who actually don't get paid very much, they're probably not going to pay a whole load of national insurance or pensions on their income. So that's how it works if your business is closed by the government. But much more generally, most businesses are not going to be closed by the government, and the job support scheme, I think, will be very useful and very widely used. And it does look and feel very much like a continuation of the furlough scheme, but with a different name. So the idea behind the job support scheme is for businesses where you are open, but you've got reduced demand, so you don't have enough work for all of your staff to be paid full time. So they're doing some work, but they're not working all the time. That's the essence of it. And the rules are now that the employee must work, to count, the employee must work 20% of their hours. So if they work a normal 5-day week, that's 1 day a week. So that's quite easy to understand. So if they work 1 day a week, then you pay them 20% of their wages for that 1 day week. So you pay them normally for that 1 day. So then it's what to do with the 80% that's missing. Of course, that 80% could be less. So you could pay them for 2 days a week, 3 days a week. You could just not have enough work for them on the Fridays, whatever. So there'll be some time that's paid that must be at least 20%, at least 1 day. And then there'll be an unworked bit. And so who pays for the unworked bit? Well, of that unworked bit, A third of it is suffered by the poor old employee, which you can top up. 61.67%, oh yes, is paid for by the government, so that's refunded by the government, and 5% is paid for by the employer. So that's in essence how it works. Now, I think there is an important way, I think there is an interesting way in which this works with the £1,000 you get for bringing back furloughed employees. Now, while people who are on the job support scheme do not have to have been furloughed, I think a lot of them will have been. So as long as you pay within the limits and you pay them in November, December and January, you'll maybe only pay them for one day a week plus 5% of the rest, and you'll get £1,000 as a grant in February. So actually what you're paying them, if they're only working 1 day a week, the net amount of all the grants, you're really not paying them very much at all. So I think a lot of people will use that for people who they really only need a little bit. And if they've got a choice between them not working anymore and making them redundant and going on this, the cost now of keeping somebody 1 day a week is very low when you consider the job support scheme and then the £1,000 bonus that you get when you add all those things together. But obviously calculations need to be made. Now, the job support scheme does have a lot of rules. I think they've learned from the furlough and they have brought in a lot of rules, and I want to go through some of the small print and make sure I don't miss any. So I'm going to read some of it. So obviously, if you claim the grant for people's hours, you must actually pay that to the employees. It's not for the employer, it's to be passed on to the employees. But normally it's the other way around, you pay them first and then you claim it, because the first claims will be made on the 8th of December, which will be after you've made the end of November payroll. The employee does not have to have been furloughed. However, they need to have been on the August payroll. So the RTI, the real-time submission that you made on the 23rd of September, they need to have been on that, and they need to have been paid in previous months. They need to be a real employee is what they're saying, but they don't need to have been furloughed, and they can have been brought in the summer. There is a maximum refund per employee of £1,541.75. It will operate for 6 months from November 2020. So that's November, December, January, February, March, April. So all the way through. Employers may top up the wages, so you can top them up to the full amount if that's what you prefer to do. If you've got more than 250 employees, there are separate rules and there's a bit more bureaucracy that you need to go through. You need to prove that show that your revenue has dropped or is the same, and you shouldn't be paying dividends and stuff like that. But that's for people who've got more than 250 employees, and for not many of the people that I deal with do have that many employees. But if you do, just be aware there are extra rules for you. You can claim for open and closed job support scheme sort of at the same time, but I don't really understand. There must have some particular circumstances where you're open for a period and then you close. So you can claim, but not you can't claim for open and closed for the same employee on the same day. So you just got to be a little bit careful around that. They are reasonably sensible though, but things like training, you can train voluntarily on the days when you're not working. There are reasonable rules on parental leave so that people are not unfairly treated in those circumstances. And people things like 0 hours contracts, people can claim this if they're on 0 hours contracts. In terms of the minimum wage and how that works, the minimum wage, so for the hours that they actually work, they have to get the minimum wage. Employees have to get the minimum wage, which seems fair enough. If they're working, they should get the minimum wage. But by implication, if they're not working, they just get 2/3 of their wages. And if that happens to be less than the minimum wage, then you don't have to pay them the full minimum wage for those, although you can. Another one that I think could be quite important, that for people who are being made redundant, you shouldn't be claiming this while you're making them redundant and while they're working their notice period. I think that could be a consideration. And please remember that these rules, if you reduce somebody's pay, you are changing somebody's terms and conditions. And these are government rules, but your contract with your employee is a completely separate matter. So anything that you do, you must agree with your employees, and you do it in writing. And if you need HR advice, then get it, because I can see this being a contentious issue, and people don't like having that pay cut, obviously. So do just tread carefully. So the job support scheme, there are two sides to it. There's the open one and the closed one. I think it is now really quite generous, and people will be getting a lot of people's employment costs back, and so I can see it being quite heavily used, and I think that it will help businesses through over the next 6 months, which are likely again to be difficult trading periods. And for the many businesses that are suffering real hardship and real reduced turnover, it will enable you to keep your team together so that hopefully when we get back to some sort of normality, we can make our businesses thrive again. As I say, I think that I have tried to simplify this and distill it down, and I think it's an important message, and I think there will be a lot of confusion out there, both because the rules are a little bit confusing and because they've changed them midstream. So please feel free to share the video with people who might be interested. I will be giving updates as if and when more information is available, or if they change the rules again, heaven forbid. And even pressing the like button, that's really helpful because that just helps the algorithm acknowledge the video.